The New Orleans Saints traveled to Minnesota to face the Vikings in this week's NFC matchup. I'm Ralph Michaels, joined in studio with Preston the Sports Cheetah and Marco D'Angelo. These two met earlier. We talked about that in the Pittsburgh-Jacksonville game, but situations were a little different. Sam Bradford was a quarterback. Adrian Peterson was playing running back for the Saints. They were both trying to figure out their offenses. Obviously, different teams, different situations. Your take, Preston?
Yeah, it's interesting because a week ago my take might have been, how as good as Minnesota's defense is, how are they going to stop Ingram and Kamara, and that duo is just next level this season since the Adrian Peterson stuff. And then, the Panthers did that, basically, and they said, Drew Brees, you're going to have to beat us, which he did for about 3 quarters. It'll be interesting. I'm staying away. I think my number was a little bit under 4. I know that's 4 is kind of the market price right now, maybe even a couple 4.5s. And it was interesting because it opened 4.5 and went directly to 3.5, and now it's inched back up. So maybe seeing some sharper action here on Minnesota because I think the splits are still pretty heavy on Saints tickets. So I'm staying away. I think it's going to be an intriguing matchup. For my Falcons' future, I think I'm rooting for the Saints just for the sake of not having to play in Minnesota and playing that defense and the familiarity with playing New Orleans. So I'm a Saints fan for that. I'm not sure what Marco's on, but we might be rooting against each other in the end.
Saints down the stretch, 9-3 to finish the year, but those 3 losses were their last 3 road games. A concern for you?
It's part of the reason why I'm on Minnesota in this one. I like Minnesota. And, we talked so much about the difference of the Saints this year being how good the defense plays. We were surprised that the defense playing so well. And the reason they were playing so well was that running game, that two-headed monster that we were talking about with Ingram and Kamara. Well, guys, if you've looked at the last 5 weeks, they've been shut down running. They've been held to under 100 yards rushing 4 of the last 5 games. And that happened to be once they started playing playoff teams. Atlanta held them to 50 yards rushing. They did get 131, but that was against the Jets. They were held against Atlanta in a second meeting to 86, 92 at Tampa Bay, and last week 41 in the Carolina game. When you take the running game away from the Saints, then they got to revert back to their normal selves where they're throwing more, and what's happening is it's shifting the time of possession and putting the defense back on the field more. And if you look at the last 3 games, Matt Ryan threw for 264, Jameis Winston threw for 345, and Cam Newton, who has not had big games this year throwing the football, threw for 306 last week. That's a major concern for me with this. Now, the one drawback to Minnesota, their defense is great. I love their defense. Again, they're the number 1 in points allowed. They stuff the run, and they're going to force the Saints to have to go the distance to score. But Case Keenum, we've talked about quarterbacks and playoff experience. He doesn't have the playoff experience, obviously, of a Drew Brees. That is my only negative on the Minnesota side. But, you go into that dome stadium, it's only a couple years old. That is loud there. They get pumped up, in this Vikings team, they've done nothing wrong. They've won 11 of their last 12 games. Their only loss was a game in which they had 3 turnovers against Carolina. They take care of the football. That was only the second time down the stretch that they had turnovers. This team doesn't turn the football over. They had 3 turnovers against Carolina and 1 turnover against Cincinnati. You go back into November, they're tossing goose eggs as far as turnovers. You don't turn the football over. You play great defense. It's kind of tough to beat a team on the road. I like Minnesota here. I got them. And throw out another stat for you. Minnesota, the last 3 seasons is a home favorite. And when you think about Minnesota as a home favorite, they're generally not scoring a lot of points. So you would think maybe they got some wins and not covers in there. How about 15-4 against the spread? Minnesota.
I believe 17-4-1. I looked at a number the last 22 games as a home favorite. So, I remember watching that Rams game, and the Minnesota fans deserved, probably they were worth a touchdown. Just they were so loud, and you get a few false start penalties, and the team can't audibilize those plays they want. So,
the Saints have an advantage playing on the road in a dome because they're used to, dome and how loud it can be, but they're used to it being loud when the other teams got the ball, not when they got the ball. So definitely I'm going Minnesota.
Marco's best bet on the Minnesota Vikings minus the points at home. Remember, the Vikings would be the first home team to host the Super Bowl if they continue on this road. This video brought to you by $2 Tuesday. I was lucky enough and honored enough to be the $2 handicapper this past week. You got my 5% SEC Game of the Week for just $2. And each and every week, hottest handicapper, best card, $2 each and every Tuesday, the best value in all of sports. WagerTalk.com.